Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to World of Perspective Radio on Blog Talk Radio. My name is Elizabeth Alron and I am your host. If you look up the words used to name this show, you will find among many others a picture or view of something for the word perspective, a realm or domain or sphere of human activity or interest for the word world. And if you look up the word human, you find sympathetic, humane. When you put the elements together, to me, it says that a world of perspective is a sympathetic and humane view of the things that matter. When you join me, you'll always find the show taking a perspective of you that will potentially be inspiring, helpful, or illuminating. Does it mean you need to take it on as your own? Hardly. If it provides you fuel to continue going in the direction you've been going, great. If it gives you a new course of action to consider, also great. All I am desiring to do is give you some food for thought. The call-in number for the show is 347-324-5745. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to spending time with you.
When I heard about this book, I always thought about, the word diet, because whenever you hear the word diet, it doesn't exactly have the best connotation usually. And, when people talk about diets, they usually talk about how they don't really succeed because there's at least three reasons. One, people feel deprived. Two, it's temporary. And three, it doesn't really fit in with someone's daily life. So I was wondering what you would say about how you approached this in terms of how you designed it and what you called it in terms of in that context.
Well, it's kind of like a cycle. When people go on a diet, there's the initial enthusiasm for it, and then there's maybe a little bit of disappointment. In fact, 95% of Americans, according to statistics, who go on a diet will gain their weight back. So no wonder people are frustrated. But the soul diet is really, I think, a concept that people haven't heard of before. In other words, people are very used to the idea that you're going to put your body on a diet, but the idea that you're going to put your soul or your mind on a diet is unique to them. And so it might be refreshing to people, and people who have actually done the diet tell me so. And in terms of the disappointment that you're mentioning, people who look at it negatively and say, well, a diet just is too overwhelming for me. I keep trying them and I keep failing. The advantage of the soul diet is it tackles that very issue, because that's what's going on in your mind. We're tackling what's happening in the mind. Those negative thoughts in the mind is exactly what we're tackling with the soul diet. So we're not just talking about a diet for the body where you just stop eating. We're going to look at your entire life. Mm-hmm. In fact, in the book, there is a map, and you can also see it on my website on souldiet.com that you can just download there. It's a map called the satellite map, where after you do the diet, you can see your entire life on your entire mind that you have worked out on paper on a map. You can see it mapped out in front of you. And so you're looking at something extremely holistic rather than just, I'm going to go on a diet to lose weight. Mm-hmm. You're really going on a diet to improve your life in general. It conquers everything. And as I explained also in my workshops too, and by the way, I do some workshops around the country later on. I'll tell you a little bit more. But in the workshops, I explain that if you fill in all that you're supposed to fill in the soul diet, you'll start to see yourself in ways that you haven't been able to see before. And so it'll help you tackle that resistance you feel inside of you when you're doing a physical diet, just a food diet, because you feel that negativity. This will help you appreciate why you're dieting, what am I doing this for, and where does it fit within my entire life, which other diet books rarely go into.
Okay. So that is great, because I think a lot of times the diets fail because they really don't address the core things, and certainly your book, it's not a very big book, but it actually is big in the sense of what it provides, I'd say. And I could see how it could be actually kind of confronting for some people, I think, on some level.
It is very confronting. I don't make any qualms about that. I actually I found it to be the best way to go is when you're in a culture that promotes the idea that you can just feel good about yourself, and without really going into the nitty-gritty of what makes you up, then you're not really achieving anything. You're achieving everything on a very superficial level. But people who are, one of the premises of the Soul Diet is that self-esteem is knowing who you are and not being ashamed of it, and not being afraid of it, and confronting yourself. Like you say, confronting. It's really an opportunity to confront yourself without being afraid. Many people will say self-esteem is just focusing on your strengths. What are your strengths? Who are you? Why are you so strong? Focus on that. Don't look at the negative side of you. But the Soul Diet says embrace yourself. Who are you? What are your negative side? What is your negative side? What are your weaknesses? And embrace them because they're supposed to be there. Because it's okay to have your negative side. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do anything about it and not try to work on it. But the idea that you should just ignore it, how could that possibly lead to a person having self-esteem? It's like they're just focusing on the positive side of themselves and knowing there's some dark spider webs and cobwebs in a closet, lurking in the corners of their minds about their negative side of things, and they're just ignoring it. It's almost like, I'm fine, really, I'm okay. I don't have any of that. I'm great. I know I'm perfect, so
right. I don't have anything wrong.
That's right. And you look at, and then the books will tell you. Some of the books will tell you, look in the mirror and tell yourself you're wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But is that really addressing the problem, or is that just sort of whitewashing it? And what I mean, it may make you feel superficially on a high. But anytime anyone ever sort of like touches on those that stuff we've put in the cobwebs in the back corners, we get very nervous because we don't want to focus on that. And to me, I've seen how self-esteem can be a person who understands I've got these things about me. They're wonderful because they're opportunities for growth, and I don't think of myself as a failure. I don't think of myself as a bad person in these areas. I think of myself as a person with certain challenges in those areas that I'm working on. And it's just a real paradigm shift because one of the main reasons I wrote the book is because there aren't other books that will tell you to embrace that side of you. Mm-hmm. Most other books will tell you that if you want to understand yourself, understand your positive side of you, just understand that side of you, your strengths. And to me, it's almost like avoidance, and you're avoiding yourself. I can't possibly understand how that could be self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people sense that on a deeper level. So the diet does confront a person, but it's kind of like, people are very, very willing to go on an Atkins diet and go on this induction period where it's really hard, but they understand they've got to tackle it. And in the same sense, the Soul Diet is for people who are ready to tackle themselves. But the result is so beautiful because it's just an appreciation of who you are, and you don't have to be ashamed. And
I actually, part of what I do too, and I can relate to what you're saying, is I always talk about people being true to themselves, and true to themselves. I think too, sometimes when people think there's a wrong and a right, it's because somebody else thinks that something's wrong when for maybe a person it's right.
Right,
so,
and that's exactly where this book comes in terms of the media influence. When you say somebody else thinks it's wrong,
mm-hmm.
Very often that somebody else is collective society in general.
Mm-hmm.
Media influence, imagery, consumerism especially. It's amazing how advertising can mold or shape the direction of a culture.
Now, I actually want to just interject at this point, too, because we were talking about this, and it is kind of ironic because you do definitely address how media affects things, and in part of your diet actually suggests staying away from media and even specifically talk shows. So
yeah.
For anyone...
Everybody turn off... No.
So for those who would read this and go, okay, so he's saying one thing, and then it seems like he might be doing another. I know that there's another piece to that. So why don't you go ahead and address that?
You could even go ahead and use the word hypocritical. It's fine.